Well, good afternoon, everybody. I hope you all had a chance to take a break and move around a little bit from this great day of conversation. My name is David Greenham, and I'm the chair of the Maine Arts Commission. And again, I want to thank you for joining us for this virtual MICA, our online reimagining of the Maine International Conference of the Arts. We have programs all the way through the afternoon, and I hope you'll stick with us. Our art break for this afternoon features a clip of a live performance by Maine musicians Kenya Hall and Kafari. Kenya Hall and Kafari performed together as part of the Jazz at the Lions Club music series on Peaks Island in September of last year. Our performance series it was a performance series designed to gather small audiences together safely to experience outdoor live music. Hailed as a soul powerhouse by Rolling Stone magazine, Kenya Hall's artistry weaves together indomitable vocals with a fierce blend of soul and funk, delivered with a rare energy that leaves every audience she sings to better for having been a part of it. She is joined by Kafari, the alias of Portland, Maine-based pianist, percussionist, and beat maker Ahmad Muhammad. Their burgeoning collaboration takes inspiration from their long-standing friendship and a wide variety of musical traditions. Please enjoy Kenya Hall and Kafari.
You guys, are we here together right now? Are you so happy to be like with more than just ourselves right now? It feels so good to see you guys. I know it's cold. Thank you for being here, and it's cold. I forgot how to be in front of people.
The joy of children laughing around you. These are the makings of you. These are the makings. These are the makings of you. These are the makings. The righteous way to go. Little one would know or believe if I told them so. You're second to none. The joy of all mankind should reflect some sign of these words.
just takes good care, because when you take good care of yourself, you take good care of your community, you know? Like the link between self-care and community care is like, it's right there. So we bless everybody and hope you take good care of yourselves, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Kenya Hall and Kafari, filmmaker Chris Battaglia, and the event organizer Peter McLaughlin for sharing a performance that is reminiscent of what many of the themes have been here today, this resiliency of the arts. And we look forward to more of it. Our keynote today, Building Resilience in an Age of Uncertainty for Artists and Arts Leaders, is being presented by Beth Cantor. Beth is an author, a virtual facilitator and trainer, and is an internationally recognized thought leader in digital transformation, networks, and well-being in the workplace, with over 35 years of providing capacity building for nonprofits and foundations. She was named one of the most influential women in technology by Fast Company and one of Business Week's Voices of Innovation. Beth is the co-author of the award-winning Network Nonprofit books and The Happy, Healthy Nonprofit, Strategies for Impact Without Burnout. Her clients include the Packard Foundation, the Resilience Initiative, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and many others. Working remotely during a pandemic, financial crisis, civil unrest, and a seemingly endless list of overlapping emergencies has undeniably added more stress to our lives this past year. Not only have our in-person offices pivoted to virtual or semi-virtual, but our routines and program delivery have been disrupted. Beth is here to share tips on how to build your personal resilience and calm during a time of high anxiety, and to help all of us maintain that work-life balance during this difficult time to help us succeed in a post-COVID world. And with the previous presentations today, we encourage you to add your questions in the Q&A box as we go. We'll have time for Beth to respond at the end. The MICA keynote today, it's my pleasure to introduce Beth Cantor.
Thank you, David, for that great introduction. And I'm so thrilled to be here. It was so great to see the videos of Maine. I'm based in California now, but I spent most of my life outside the Boston area and spent many happy times hiking and visiting the state of Maine. So I'm with you there in spirit. There we go. And so I'm going to just hop right to it and talk a little bit about what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to spend a little bit at the beginning talking about the negative impact of living and working during uncertain and really stressful times. I'm going to give you some tips on how to avoid burnout and build your personal resilience. And then a few tips around creating the resilient workplace culture. And I'm going to go a little bit deeper into that last one with regards to technology in my breakout session. So, but I want to hear from you. We're going to launch a poll. You know, how's your work life now compared to before COVID? Is it easier, same as before, or is it more difficult? And you should see a poll. And I'm guessing at some of the results. I've been asking this question since March. And the variations haven't been that much. It's held kind of constant, kind of an indication of what's happening in our worlds. David referenced, multiple crises. Some people call it a syndemic, where different crises sort of feed off of each other, creating even a worse environment. So I don't know if we have most people taking the poll yet, or if we have, a good percentage of the results to share. Why don't we do that? Let's see. And there we go, more difficult. And you're no different than many other nonprofit and even arts communities that I've been talking to. 74% are finding it more difficult. So let's talk a little bit about why building personal and organizational resilience is so mission critical and why it's so stressful. So, we had COVID and we still have it. I don't know what your situation there exactly is in Maine, but in California, it's not so great. We're tired. We're normalizing death counts. Many states and cities are under public health lockdowns. Literally, we can't go anywhere really or do anything unless it's essential service. Every time we leave the house, we have to wear a mask. And if we're lucky to have work, we're working virtually from home. The financial impact's been devastating to many. And I know it's particularly hard in the arts community because many arts are communal and they're closed right down, or they have to do virtual representations of their art. We're also fighting, for racial equity. We're fighting, we're become anti-racist. And this is all layered on top of COVID, which is really showing the inequality that's happening. And, we all probably said, we had, as we celebrated New Year's at home, hopefully we bid adieu to 2020, and maybe we had a little bit, a bit of optimism because of the election and because the announcements of the vaccine on the horizon, although that will take months before we're really back to quote normal. And in less than a week into 2021, of course, we experienced a really traumatic event, adding more stress. So we have to acknowledge that the context we're in and we're living in is stressful, and that self-care and building your personal resilience and creating a robust virtual workplace culture is really essential to our survival. It's not, foo-foo light stuff, or or somebody once said before the pandemic, oh, this is all hippie stuff. It's not important. It's very important, and we need to make it part of our lives and our work. Okay, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this is my Debbie Downer slide. What is the negative impact? Because all of you are living this. We have isolation. So if you're not with family, you're alone in the house. That can be stressful. We have this uncertainty. It's really hard to plan. There's financial uncertainty. We don't know what our budgets are. We don't know how it's going to impact donors over the long haul. Layoffs on staffs, all demand for our services. Everybody's being stretched thin, and I've experienced this myself. It's really hard to figure out okay, next year's budget, I don't know. We have tech overload. I'm going to address this in my session because everything we have to do on the screen. Here we are, case in point. And this has caused a new type of overload and exhaustion. And I'm going to give you some tips to deal with that specifically this afternoon. And then, of course, work-life balance. It's many nonprofits and leaders have found it hard to manage the boundaries between work and life due to unrealistic expectations, maybe from managers or just this working at home, or lack of downtime activities outside the home, and sort of blurring of boundaries. So I'm going to talk a lot about this work-life balance and how you can build resilience in a moment. And just what, we have this looming mental health crisis coming. I don't want to dwell on this too much. This is a survey from Kaiser Health Foundation. We're all feeling this kind of collective grief, missing work in the office, seeing other people. On top of that, our offices are homes. And so this is generating lots of people having symptoms of anxiety and depressive disorders. Getting screened is increased, and also getting services. And we're feeling these symptoms of burnout. And with severe burnout, it leads to depression. When I wrote the network, the Happy Healthy nonprofit, Network Nonprofit was my first book. One of the tools that I included in the book, and it's also kind of a coping mechanism, is that it's really important to spot the early warning signs of burnout or mental health issues. And I have a nonprofit burnout assessment, and it sort of categorizes all of the different symptoms we may be feeling around burnout that we may attribute to something else. And these are physical symptoms, aches and pains, there's cynicism and attachment from work, difficult to feel motivated, and then signs of ineffectiveness and lack of accomplishment. And I'll include these are included in the handouts that you'll receive from me. And you rate these different statements, and it puts you into one of 4 categories of burnout, because it doesn't happen all at once, although I think it's been accelerated in the last 9 months. But we start out passion driven, we work a lot, we're excited, and then it becomes maybe a little bit difficult to keep going. We call that passion waning. Maybe it's harder to be motivated in the morning. And then we reach this kind of passion challenge. We may, have some aches and pains. We might have a shorter fuse, especially if you're not only working at home, but you're also homeschooling. You might have a shorter fuse with members of your family. And then you get up to this last stage, which is passion depleted. And you don't want to get there because it's harder to bounce back. So it's really important to monitor those early warning signs for mental health issues and depression, or whether it's just sort of regular burnout, and begin to get help. A factor that's really contributing to this is this work from home, whether it's full-time or even partial, because working from home, having work-life balance can help you rebound, but working from home makes it harder. So during normal times, it was easier to put our life into different compartments, to compartmentalize. I'm tripping on that word. Your work week, with things like your commute, your weekend plans, the Monday morning banter in the the break room or across the hall. But our current situation has made these communal rituals go poof, disappear. Instead, what happens now at working from home is that your days blend together, afternoons turn to nights, weekends and weekdays are interchangeable, and our sense of time is totally disrupted, making it easier to overwork or think about work all the time. And this is what can lead to that burnout and that lack of motivation, and ultimately those some of those mental health concerns like depression. And I think it's really prolonged and accelerated by these periods of uncertainty and stress. But the good news is, now that I've depressed you all, I want to tell you the good news is that you can control what's happening. You can't control what's happening in the outside world. I wish we could. And if we acknowledge that, we can control what's happening in the way that we work. We can control how we work and how we set work-life balance boundaries, and with different habits that we can put into place. And so I'm just going to give you some tips for that. These are super practical. Some of these you might have heard before, so maybe they're a reinforcement. Some of them you may already be doing. Great, awesome. So I encourage you to share in the chat as we go. So the first tip is remember the basics: sleep, nutrition, exercise. We can't eat our feelings. We're in this for the long haul. It's not just a snow day. We can't eat our feelings for over a year. That's bad. So we've got to avoid the sugar, the ice cream, the alcohol, in moderation. We can't use that as our coping mechanism. It's also important to get exercise. Exercise is a key component for your well-being. It's also important because it can boost your immune system. And then sleep. Oh my God, sleep is so important. And I know at the beginning of the pandemic, I was having really bad plague-induced nightmares, and I wasn't sleeping really well. And I know many of us weren't. And we really need that 6 to 8 hours of night of sleep. So I really overhauled my sleep hygiene to make sure I wasn't staying up, to make sure I was staying away from screens, to make sure my bedroom was set at a cooler temperature, and to make a commitment. I even use this thing called an Aura, which is a ring that's sort of tracking my sleep. So I'm making sure that I'm getting that restorative, good sleep. Pro tip, there's a great podcast called Sleep With Me. If you're suffering from insomnia, gives you some great tips. Also Headspace, and we're going to talk about apps in my session this afternoon, but Headspace has some meditations that can help you fight insomnia. So take advantage of these things. Establishing rituals to begin and end your day. So like, I don't know whether I'm, I work at home or do I live at work? Again, I mentioned before how those boundaries and those bumper times kind of disappear. So those kind of mark our day. And see, the problem was, I think, is that the stuff that we could do for self-care, like go to the gym or, or go to an arts performance, for God's sakes, go to, the museum. Those were communal activities, and those aren't really as much available to us. And so we also had these markers for our time, if maybe we were commuting into the office instead of telecommuting. So we had to drive or ride a bike or walk or get on a public transportation. And we had those bumper times, or maybe we had to pick up the kids from school. All of that is kind of gone. So we have to create our own rituals. So what I do is I do a fake commute. And in fact, I was recently profiled in the Wall Street Journal for this just the other day. And because, and that's how I use my transition time. I have a morning commute. And what I do is I get up every morning and I go for a walk around my neighborhood. And what I started noticing, see that beautiful rose? That's from the spring. I started looking at my neighbor's plants and taking pictures, and it was great because I wasn't like just waking up and commuting down the hall and arriving at my desk. I had that buffer time for thinking and, getting ready to work. I also do an end of day, a rush hour commute. And there I drag my husband with me, and it's a no COVID, no politics discussion zone. And we just go for a walk. And this has really helped my mental health. Now, your fake commute doesn't have to involve walking. Because I know not everybody, not everybody has mobility, but it could be reading, it could be something, but some sort of buffer activity or ritual to your day. So you could have start and stop rituals. Okay. So I just want to take a moment and think about, like, do you have rituals to start your workday and to end your workday? It's really important to, place those boundaries around your time, because it's a signal. A ritual can be a signal to shut off the work brain. So I don't know. So think about that. I want you to write down, maybe you're already doing one, or maybe you can think about something that you might like to do that's fun. And it doesn't have to be all day. It doesn't mean you're goofing off. It's a way to set your day and actually give you that resilience to get through the day. So not only putting boundaries on the time that you work, you need to put boundaries on where you work. Now, all of us aren't, and I'm in the same way. You'll see I have this beautiful succulent behind me because I'm basically in my living room because I'm at home with 2 college students, and also my husband's working from home, and our house is not set up as an office space. So we don't have corner offices. So I found I had to create my own space where I could set up my laptop and then, more importantly, put it away at the end of the day. And having that mental just ability to say, okay, this is where I'm working and where I switch my work brain on, and then I can put it all away and I can switch my work brain off. And you can be creative. I know this is the arts group. You can be very creative. In fact, here's one of my favorite standing desks. It's a picture from actually a pianist friend. So be creative, find that corner in your house if you're working at home where you can turn your work brain on, and more importantly, where you can turn it off. Now, the public health advice has been to practice social distancing. We have to keep at least 6 feet away. But we also need to practice mental distancing. We don't need to keep on top of every single piece of breaking news about the virus or what happened in Washington, or we don't need in real time to know that. We need and so what I started to do is to put dedicated times where I'm going to consume the news and then turn it off. And I'm going to consume the news from, sources that I know and that I trust. So I put myself on a balanced media diet. Because what happens is, if you're repeatedly consuming the news throughout the day, whether it's through news media outlets or whether you're on social media, you're shooting yourself with a second arrow, because you're causing that trauma to happen over and over and over again every time you read something. Yes, I'm not saying ignore what's going on, but you can't continually 24/7 consume it. So put some boundaries on that, put yourself on a balanced media diet. Think of it as a way of protecting your mental health and building your resilience so you can make this through this very difficult time. Managing your energy in addition to your time. So most of us think about time management and putting boundaries around, we're only going to spend this amount of time in doing it, and having to-do lists and putting things in our calendar. But we also need to manage our energy. And one thing to know about our bodies is that we work in this thing called Ultradian Rhythms, which is about 90-minute or 20-minute periods where we can concentrate, we can get on a roll, we can get a lot of work done, but then we lose that concentration and focus, and we need to replenish that energy by taking a brief break. Now, it sounds counterintuitive. You might say, oh, well, that's just goofing off. It isn't. It's really replenishing your energy so you can dive in again and reach that top performance. So think about organizing your workday in these energy reps, and taking those breaks, whether it's if you have meetings, schedule them for 50 minutes instead of 60 minutes. So you have that 10-minute buffer time between getting into the next activity, and you can replenish your energy. One of my favorite tips is exercise snacking, okay? Now, exercise snacking refers to fun-sized portions of exercise that fit into a day of what you may have traditionally thought as legit exercise, like going to aerobics or a Zumba class at the gym, which we can't do now. So I do lots of exercise snacking around my neighborhood. I walk around the block, takes 10 minutes. Or even if I'm super busy, I might just walk outside on my patio and walk around in the backyard if it's, cold outside. I know up in Maine it's colder, but I know you're all hardy and have warm coats, and you're more hardier than us living in California. I guess I have to digress about weather between the East Coast and West Coast. Having grown up in New England and lived most of my life in hardy New England, I could put my warm coat on and go outside and minus 10 degrees, right? And in the snow, and even loved it. And when I moved to California, the coldest it gets here in the winter is 50 degrees. And my husband and I would go out and we'd be so hot. It's December, it's 50 degrees. We're not used to this. And we'd see people complaining about the cold and putting sweaters on their dogs. So we'd laugh. But I know that, a walk around the block is a great exercise snack. So think about what you can do in those 10-minute breaks to keep moving. So we've talked about some physical things you can do, and I want to sort of build again on this. It's not just physical; it's also our minds and how we think about things. So it's important to maintain cognitive flexibility, which is the ability to keep optimistic. So while it's natural to want to return to some sense of normal and comfort, we want to avoid normalizing the situation because this is our current reality. We don't know much longer, how long it's going to take before the vaccine is in place and before we're really able to, feel like we have some equilibrium. And so really, this is an opportunity to evolve ourselves, our organizations, and our communities. And although the suffering is really distressing, it offers this unique chance to activate our empathy and to be better advocates for ourselves, our staff, and the people we're serving through our organizations. I like to call this radical empathy. And this all takes something called cognitive flexibility, the ability to reframe your own negative thoughts. The framework that you're looking at here comes from the Genesis Healing Institute in Sacramento. And it talks about the kind of different phases that people are going through as we face these multiple crises. At first it's the shock, I'm unsure, I'm afraid. Then we start to adapt, we ask for support, we engage in something meaningful. And then we start this evolution process about our lives' dreams and looking at our present circumstances with curiosity. And then we reach this liberation phase where we can live courageously in the world without fear and anchor ourselves in infinite potential. And I think what's really important to help with your cognitive flexibility is to start a journaling habit. And I've started doing this. I keep a one sentence journal every day. And it's actually over 5 years now. I've started it. I started at the beginning of the pandemic. And so each day you see 2020 and then 2021 and 2022, and I can write 1 or 2 sentences about them, how I'm feeling. And I'm looking forward to kind of looking back. And also the act of journaling gives you this chance for reflection, and reflection can help you shift that perspective and build that cognitive flexibility. And the second is, my last tip around here is to eat a rainbow every day. And now this comes from my dear friend, John Hayden, who some of you may know him. He was a fundraising consultant. Sadly, he passed away from cancer almost a year ago to the day. And while he was going through his illness, he was eating a rainbow to mean that he was eating healthy foods, a rainbow of vegetables and fruits. But during the beginning of the pandemic, and I still see it, many families had young kids in our neighborhood, and they started chalking the walks with different rainbows. And so people could walk around the neighborhood and see these messages of hope. So keep a message of hope. Think about the rainbow at the end of this to help keep us going. So those are some practical tips around building your personal resilience and work-life balance. You want to build out a whole self-care plan. I've written a lot about this in my book. I've included a self-care plan template in the materials that you'll receive along with the slides. And by writing this down and making a formal plan, I know it might sound silly, it helps you approach it with intention. I write a self-care plan every year around when I do my New Year's planning and goals. I also include a self-care plan. And it's like what I'm going to do for myself, the skills I'm going to build to deal with other people, how I'm going to relate to my environment, how I'm going to relate to technology, and how I'm going to relate to work. So all of those, how am I going to build self-care and resilience around all of those things? The template gives you some great examples and some tips for doing this. And really then it's putting it into action, which is about building habits, okay? And so when I wrote the book, I was lucky enough to interview some habit change experts, and one of them is BJ Fogg, and he's right down the road from me here. He's at Stanford University. He wrote a book called Tiny Habits, and I really love it because it helps you change pretty easily, because change is hard. But this is making your habit tiny. So you anchor it to an existing behavior. You come up with the tiny behavior, like maybe you're not going to walk 5 miles a day starting off, but maybe you're going to walk around the block for 5 minutes. And then once you do it, you celebrate, yay me. So here's an example of how you can put this framework into practice with doing meditation. I wasn't a big meditator, but I was able to apply the Tiny Habits framework and to begin some mini meditations. So the cue is, realize that I'm awake, okay? That's my cue. I'm going to do a mini habit of mindfulness, which might be to take 3 breaths. And then once I do it, I put my palms together and say, yay me, all right? And once you're able to repeat this kind of cycle, you've established it as a habit. So I'm gonna shift into some tips about building workplace virtual culture and having that be resilient. I want to encourage any stretching. Now, I know some people may be limited in their mobility to stretch their hands or their shoulders or their arms. Maybe just do some neck rolls. And if you have limited mobility and can't do that, just take some deep breaths. And I'm just going to see if there's any questions before I move to the next section. And I have a wonderful Q&A monitor who's looked at that question tab.
Hi, Beth, it's Martha.
Hi, Martha.
There's one question. Approaching a 2021 budget is the big difficulty.
Okay.
And would love to discuss.
I hear you. I hear you. I know, I know what I've been hearing from a lot of organizations is doing something called scenario planning. You know, and not trying to plan out the whole entire year, but tackling it a quarter at a time with different scenarios. We assume that, you know, best case scenario, moderate scenario, worst case scenario, and what we're going to do as a result. I would refer you to the leapambassadorscommunity.org. There is a something called the Great Reset tool, which is it's not a specific budgeting tool, but it's an overall organizational effectiveness tool on how to deal with uncertainty, and maybe download it and go through that with your team and also your board. So I am going to move now into a couple of tips before I open it up for Q&A just about a workplace culture and building resilience there, because there's stuff we can do for ourselves, but we're also work with other people, and other people can certainly cause stress. And when you have a really great, resilient virtual workplace culture, it can help. So workplace culture, just a quick reminder that it involves these 6 different aspects: purpose, your mission, your values, your beliefs about what's important, the behaviors that should be guided by those values, and that's sometimes that causes the stress, where there are stated values, but the actual behavior is different. Recognition for those who bring those values to life. Rituals, I mentioned a few individually, but they can also be brought into the workplace for your team or whole organization. And then visual cues. So I just want to point out that what we're talking about here is culture shift, and that's not comfortable. And as I mentioned before, we're just not immune to what's going on in the outside world. And we really need to embrace this and understand that, you know, what people are experiencing in the outside world. There's, based on our privilege, some people are feeling more stress than others. So we really need to embrace this and co-create calming workplace norms. So a resilient workplace culture has something called the 5 F's, and these are F words you can say. It's functioning. Do people have what they need? Do they feel productive? Feelings. Do people feel appreciated and respected? Friendship. Do people feel connected to one another? Is there a sense of community? Forward. Do people have opportunities for growth and professional development? And fulfillment. Are people connected and aligned with the organization's higher purpose? And this is so hard when it's, you know, when your performances and the purpose of arts organizations is being done virtually, and we don't have the feedback and the appreciation from the live audience. So we have to think about ways, how can we maintain our fulfillment and connection to the mission? So when I've done this work, you know, pre-pandemic, we talk about things that we can do in the workplace when we're all together. More recently, I've been talking about it. How can we do things virtually that build a culture of resilience? So I'm going to share some examples. Virtual walking meetings. So this could be done with Zoom even, or FaceTime, and just, you know, doing a walk and talk. It's harder with a larger group, and I know it's hard in Maine with the snow and cold. Maybe this is a spring activity. Maybe I also done, when it's been raining, I've done virtual walks in my house, or even just gotten on the phone and walked around my house talking to people. We know that, you know, walking helps generate new ideas because it's getting rid of that brain fog. Friendship, celebrations. You know, resilient workplace culture is one where everyone enjoys working with each other, and that, you know, there's a sense of celebration. You can create rituals around celebrating work anniversaries, maybe birthdays, reaching big milestones, Fridays. So we can also do virtual celebrations. And this is an example from a small nonprofit in Florida. And they had a llama come from the local zoo. And this was a surprise birthday party for the executive director. They had a cake delivered to her house, and it was scheduled during their normal staff meeting, and she was totally surprised. So there's all different fun, creative ways that you can do this virtually. Feelings, people feeling appreciated, so important. And one of the things that we're missing, because everything has to be scheduled and we're virtual, is that we're missing those informal opportunities to connect with each other. It's called the water cooler effect. And according to research, this is where great innovation happens and good team building and support happens. So one thing to think about is maybe scheduling meetings where it's more social than getting work done. Some have been doing happy hours, coffees, or playing games together. You know, some people don't want to do this, and that's okay. You know, some people just, you know, if they're introverts, they want to be alone, enough, you know, or be off the screen. But try to think of ways that you can build in informal interactions with other people on your team. Another important thing is those remote one-to-one check-in questions. Check-ins used to be mostly about, like, did you get that report done? How's that grant proposal going? And that's important, yes, but it's also important to just check in personally with people, you know, how, and not super personal, but really about, you know, how are they dealing with things? How's their energy? What concerns do you have about the organization? What can I do to create a better environment for you? This is really important if you're managing people, just really checking in. Now, you don't have to spend the whole, you know, one-on-one checking in. I mean, you're not a therapist, you know, but we have to acknowledge, you know, that, and this is what I'm talking about when I say calming norms, and that we're not immune to what's going on in the outside world. I mean, we can't just keep going as business as usual. We really have to at least take a breath, acknowledge it, and really care about each other in this difficult time. Here's another example. This is virtual. This is a software called Hey Taco, and it works with Slack and allows people to give other people on your team shout outs in the form of tacos. I'm on the board of N10, and on N10's the nonprofit technology enterprise network. And what they have in their Slack, they've created the pizza emoji, pizza blanket emoji. And that's if somebody has had a really bad day and they need to eat their feelings and just have a blanket around them and go to bed. And then if somebody puts that emoji out there, then the others know that to be extra nice and supportive to that person. This is a time also to develop your skills and or for personal growth. There's a ton of online classes available out there. One of the most famous classes in happiness, taught by Laurie Santos, who's written a book about it. She's a professor at Yale, was available online for free. So I had time. I took the happiness class, and it was really great. I've also been taking other things not related to work, but classes on succulent gardening. I've been taking a writing class. I took another class on how to use some software that I had been interested in learning how to use that I've been putting off. So this, you know, this might be the time, since we can't go anyplace, that you might want to look at developing personal growth or professional growth. And finally, this fulfillment, maintaining connection to the mission. I mean, one organization has done things like Ask Me Anything, where they might bring somebody who's been through their program on a Zoom call and have staff, you know, have them tell their story and have staff, you know, ask them questions. So really finding some way. Another organization where there is some essential work going on, they've actually had those staff members also bring their mobile phones out to the field and show others who are sort of stuck at home working, you know, what's going on. You know, maintaining that connection to the mission and the people you serve is really important. Even if it's, you know, for those of you who are working in development, even just calling in and checking in with donors. So that's an example of the 5 F's. And ways that you can start to build a really robust, resilient virtual workplace culture. And those are some tips around work-life balance and building your personal resilience. So I'm just going to open it up for any questions that might pop up since we have time. I see a great question here about
Go for it.
From Tandem. Who's talking about the importance right now to focus on caring for my family and myself, and I decided this was the primary need and abandoned other previously considered vital goals. And it was a drastic time shift, and emotionally struggling with the loss of these goals and this framework of business. At the same time, sleeping late, blowing off work for an extra long dog walk is weirdly amazing place to be. Can you talk about this? Because I'm still running a business. I think it's hopefully a different framework, and I can take with me in the future. I hear you. I think this is really about balance. I know I had a point where at the beginning of the pandemic, I was really working 24/7. A lot of people were contacting me about how do I get started with, moving everything remote. I do a lot of consulting in that area. And I have clients that are some in Asia, some in Europe, all time zones in the US. And I was waking up early. I wasn't sleeping. I was just working nonstop. I was working on the weekends. I was doing this for about 3 weeks. And then I was like, I can't, this is not sustainable. So I need to let go of some stuff. I need to recognize this is not a snow day, or a snowstorm for a couple of weeks. This is I have to shift. So I took some time for myself because I really needed it. Like I see you have done. But then when I've reset, I've tried to bring back some balance between the taking time for myself and also working on different goals. And one of the things that I did during this time was I completely redid my website and redid my own business goals, which I found really helpful. So I think, maybe taking that framework about that I shared under cognitive flexibility and working through some of those journal prompts and sort of integrating both work and also taking care of yourself in more of a balance. Keeping positive.
Our question, the Great Reset tool, that was one of the questions.
Right. So you'll find that at the LEAP ambassadors community if you Google this. So this is a group of nonprofit leaders who are focused on high performance or highly effective organizations. And you'll find the performance imperative and the small but mighty tool, which is how to apply high performance, which is great leadership, financial stability, great governance, putting people first, and other pillars of great organizational, highly effective organizations. So there's a set of assessment tools there for that. But during the pandemic, one of the things that the community worked together was how do we put together an assessment tool that organizations can use to kind of reset and rebalance and recalibrate during this period of uncertainty.
So now we have a bunch of questions. Let's see if we can move through. Advice for a small staff that's balancing in-office and work at home.
Advice for a small staff and office that's balancing work at home. Okay, what you can do, I think the best thing you can do is to set I'm going to talk about this sort of in my breakout, but to set expectations about when you will be available and when you're not going to be available. So you don't get into the we're working 24/7. So that is if you send an email at midnight on Saturday, is the expectation that your staff, that other people are going to be online to answer it, or are you going to set a kind of norm around, okay, if we send evening emails, we're doing it because it's convenient for us, but we don't expect a response. Things like that. I do an exercise with the organization called Your Owner's Manual, and it helps organizations kind of figure out what are our rules of engagement virtually so that we don't get into a position where we're working all the time.
Right.
Netiquette. Absolutely.
Netiquette, right. Wondering for folks with big gaps in schedule or perhaps working non-traditional hours, not 9 to 5. How can you create rituals when things are always shifting or, you know, out of sync with other people?
That's a great question. Other people being other people in your staff. I think we all have to have flexibility and compassion for our staff of our organizations, because I don't know exactly if you have school from home as well in Maine, but you know, we have situations where some people are balancing having to, you know, young kids. I'm juggling college students. Luckily, they sleep late, so you're not hearing a lot of noise in my background. But we have to like recognize that, you know, some people are going to have to work odd hours due to their situation at home. And we have to be more compassionate about that. And we have to be more forgiving. If you're talking about that, you know, that our organization's workflow seems to happen at odd hours and it's hard for me to establish a routine. I hear you. I have that too, a little bit. Like I have a couple of projects where people want to, you know, schedule really early morning meetings, and I've protected that part of my schedule for that's my commute time, and I just say I'm not available. I know it's hard. I see somebody here too. I also think about my different self-care and resilient routines. I think of it as a carousel, and which, you know, or a playlist, and which thing am I going to do when? And I try to plan them for the week. I might not do the same thing at the same time every day, but I have a variety of things that I can do at different times. So sometimes, like in the morning, I might have to do a short commute instead of, you know, a 5-minute walk around the block, because I do have that early meeting I have to take, and then I do a longer afternoon commute. So have some flexibility about it, but make sure that you aren't so, you know, that you have so lack of a boundary around yourself that you're not doing this stuff for yourself, which is so important.
Beth, okay, I'm gonna show myself now. Everyone, we have to wrap things up. Unfortunately, there's still more questions, but the good thing is that Beth's going to be giving another workshop at when is that, 1:30? Technology wellness during a pandemic. So more of this good stuff. But right now, we're taking time for another wonderful performance that Julie Horn is going to introduce. So I hope people who didn't get their questions answered here can show up at the next workshop with Beth. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
Very good. Hi, everyone. I'm Julie Horn, and I'm the Visual Arts Director at the Maine Arts Commission. And again, I just want to thank everybody for hanging in there today and continuing on with us. And I ask that for the next several minutes, you try your best to be present with us and to lend your ears and your minds to experience some of Maine's wonderful poets. A month ago, the Maine Arts Commission staff joined a meeting of veteran artists at one of their weekly gatherings. This is time they gather to check in and share work and discuss their appreciation of writing. Our staff left that day inspired and deeply moved by their talent to put thoughts and feelings on paper. And we are thrilled to be able to share 3 poets' original work with you today. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Jeff Morton, Colonel in the United States Army, 40 years of service. This is called day 142 of 365. It was a Sunday in Afghanistan. It is more about the feelings and taking you with me on a mission similar to what we did each day, each night, for we are night hunters, in Afghanistan when I served there in 2005, 6, and 7. I hope it conveys to you that what we soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines experience is confusing, difficult to digest, and let me be clear about this. The memories never leave us. Never, ever. We just learn, hopefully, to live with them. So I'll begin. Cold encourages a rapid change into uniform. Kick open your sack. Moving, moving. Oh, those boots are cold. Fresh snow blankets the ground, and footprints tell me I'm ahead of the crowd. A clear sky allows any warmth to escape. Sounds are crisp and carries. I cherish my 3 minutes of warm water that may be my last shower, then scrape my face. Operations is always open, and the units report in as we withdraw through the shadows. No wake-up calls, no contact. A quiet night. The patrols slide in from Overwatch and savor breakfast, loud, excited, relieved. Beside them, patrols finish breakfast and slide out to clear the roads. Quiet, somber, alert. The rhythm, like a clock, counts down. The seconds to minutes until our next event. There is always a next event. Each day, we discuss the results and adjust our plans to the mishaps of a year at war. Burn the road with an electronic pulse. Thank you, Navy. We hope the cell phones are dead. Pressure plates are cleared by hand. Robots are crap. The sights are clear. A commander wants to lay a trap. It was his soldiers that bled on that strip of dirt. No. No. This is my area of expertise. My troops, my job. There's a sliver of moon tonight. Good hunting in the near dark. Like the scope on my rifle, we dial in our observers who lay in the snow to catch the placement. Perhaps that father and son drifting in from the pasture. The taller man's hand guides the smaller safely onto the road. I miss my family. Switching to scope, I press into the eye cup. The area is lit with infrared markers. To us, there is no darkness. We see all. And once seen, it cannot be forgotten. Father calls to son, who lowers a satchel into the culvert. How many soldiers will they kill? My radio squelches in my headphones. Permission to fire. The boy looks up and stares right at my marksman. He could be my son. Permission to fire.
Hi, my name is Val Lovelace. I live in Westport Island. I'm a Navy veteran of 20 years, and I served from 1976 to 1996. The poem I'm reading today is called The Women I Know, and it was inspired by the women who've touched my life in various ways and inspired me from birth until now. So, the women I know. The women I know are easy in their skin. They show signs of wear, of course, having been beaten with the force of living. Grayed wisps of hair fall over wrinkled faces, while clear but tired eyes hold visions of the future, and sometimes tear with visiting memories. Bones may bend where they did not before, after ages of working, or weeds in the garden, or children propped on hips with the groceries, and the day's mail, and the car keys, and the half-consumed, now-cold cup of coffee, and the worn stuffed toy missing an eye, magically capable of soothing a wailing child. The women I know raise their voices to each day, no matter the weather or trend or popularity or political correctness of things assumed to have grave importance. Wisdom wraps their words in fire and ice and clarity and a kind of knowing one only acquires through decades of being woman. Thinking and feeling and speaking in earthy tones, they are sisters of blood and sisters of choice, kindred through experiences which threaten to make them not enough, or too loud, or ugly. But they would not have it, though years might have passed before freedom finally found them. The women I know examine the world through lenses colored by compassion, raw honesty, and the kindest of mercies. They are builders and creators and warriors, raising families and empires for the future. In the grist and grind of difficult living, they may falter or fall, yet always rise again, and again and again and yet again, until generations have left their mark. They forge their way with beats of justice, because they already know what is possible, the way a river knows to etch its way through the land, changing its course. The women I know are rightly fierce, strong of will and wild dreamers, who harnessed howling winds on dark nights, who stoke themselves with raving courage, impatient with nonsense, unafraid of truth, quick-witted, kind-hearted, tender when that matters. They are a brimming glass, a broad palate, spare of word and generous of laughter, dancing to ancient music in their bones. Do not fancy it easy to cross them. When patience grows weary, they rise renewed and under full sail turn into the storm, because they suffer neither fools nor folly. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Matthew Eichenlob. I am a veteran. I was in the Air Force 1965 to 1969. Right now I act as a volunteer, a facilitator at the VA in Tugas for creative writing. This poem is about my parents and trains. I grew up in Latonia, Kentucky. Trains were a big influence on my life. And the title of the poem is 1951. 33 years separated my mom and dad. She 22, he 55 when they got married. Her brothers didn't like it much, and yet they liked my dad. He worked as a railway express messenger, sorted mail rolling through the night, Cincinnati to Atlanta run, then a day or two at a rooming house. Just before leaving Atlanta, he'd call home. At the appointed hour, we'd head out, drive to town, and wait by a railroad crossing. From afar, the rumble, and nearby, flashing lights, and the ding-ding of wooden crossing guards coming down. Mom lifting me to see the railway express car, its broad, milky windows pulled down, Dad waving, swooshing by. Then back in the car, a fast drive to the suspension bridge, over the Ohio River, down into Cincinnati, and on out to Union Terminal. There, amidst the comings and goings, we'd find him. The old photographs show Mom as brunette with curly perm and humble smile. Dad is thin in his double-breasted suit, complete with fedora and cigarette. In the telling of these old stories, Mom was somewhat defensive. He never acted old, she would say, always young. But this last story is mine alone. When he got sick and could no longer work, Dad and I would drive down to King Drugs to pick up Mom at the end of her shift. We'd wait for her in the old Plymouth with its beige steering wheel and gleaming Baroque dashboard. Heater on, I'd drift down into the soft brown felt. Outside, gray parking lines lay hidden beneath freezing puddles of blue and red neon. Suddenly the door would swing open, cold air and Mom rushing in, ice crystals sparkling all across the top of her hair, Mama Bear pulling me in, cold rouged cheeks squishing against mine, giving, giving. She was always giving, giving everything she had.